What if I told you that trying to move on from trauma is exactly why you're still suffering? What if everything you were taught about healing is backwards? Because trauma doesn't disappear when you ignore it. It hides, waits, and then it controls your life from the shadows. If you've ever wondered why the same emotional patterns repeat, why you sabotage good things, why certain triggers feel overwhelming, this video will explain everything. For decades, society has promoted a dangerous idea: forget the past, stay positive, let it go, move forward. But trauma does not obey motivational slogans. You cannot outrun what lives inside you. According to Jung, trauma doesn't fade with time. It fragments the psyche. It separates parts of you. And those broken pieces don't disappear. They become what he called autonomous complexes, unconscious emotional structures that operate independently of your will. In simple terms, parts of your personality get frozen in pain. And from there, they quietly begin running your life. This is why small situations trigger massive reactions. Why you feel intense fear in safe environments. Why anger explodes without warning. Why relationships collapse in familiar ways. It's not weakness, it's unresolved trauma replaying itself. Jung observed that when trauma isn't consciously faced, it forms psychic entities that behave almost like separate personalities. They wait for symbolic reminders, a tone of voice, a facial expression, a feeling in your body, and suddenly you're no longer reacting to the present. You're reliving the past. This is what Jung meant when he said, "What is not made conscious becomes fate." Most people think they're choosing their lives. In reality, many are being driven by unconscious wounds. But here's where it becomes even more disturbing. Over time, trauma doesn't just influence behavior. It reshapes identity. You stop having pain. You become pain. The rejected become rejection. The abandoned become abandonment. The abused become fragility. Your entire self-concept begins orbiting the wound, and healing starts to feel threatening. Because if the pain disappears, who are you? This is why people unconsciously resist recovery, not because they enjoy suffering, but because suffering became their identity. Pain became only familiar ground. Jung called this identification with the complex a silent psychological prison. You don't realize you're inside it, but every choice is shaped by it. This is why people return to toxic relationships, why they sabotage success, why they repeat the same emotional cycles. The unconscious isn't trying to destroy you. It's trying to finish an unfinished story. But without awareness, it can only repeat. Modern psychology often focuses on symptom control, regulate emotions, change thoughts, reduce discomfort. Jung went much deeper. He believed healing requires descent, not escape. And he described 3 essential stages. You must face the wound directly, not intellectually. Emotionally, you revisit the trauma with awareness. You stop dissociating. You stop minimizing. You stop pretending. You become a conscious witness to your own suffering. This is where fragmentation begins to reverse. This is where power starts returning. Trauma doesn't just hurt you, it steals pieces of you. Your joy, your trust, your spontaneity, your voice. Jung called this soul loss. Healing means retrieving those frozen aspects. Not just remembering them, reincarnating them into your present life. Learning to feel again, to trust again, to desire again, to create again. You don't simply analyze trauma. You reclaim yourself. 3. Symbolic integration. This is the deepest stage. Here, trauma is given meaning, not justification. Meaning, the unconscious speaks in symbols. When trauma is symbolized, it transforms from destruction into wisdom. Pain becomes insight. Suffering becomes depth. The wound becomes initiation. Jung believed that every trauma carries hidden potential, not because trauma is good, but because consciousness expands through confrontation. This is how darkness turns into strength. Most people think healing means returning to who they were before. Jung rejected this completely. Healing is not regression. It is transformation. You don't go back. You evolve forward. The trauma never disappears, but it stops controlling you. The wound becomes a scar, and scars teach. They remind you you survived. You faced the unbearable. You rebuilt yourself. You gained depth. The memory remains, but it no longer decides your future. This is individuation, becoming whole, not perfect. Whole. Healing is not a finish line. It's a new beginning. You don't free yourself from the past. You free yourself in the present. Pain may still visit, but now it knocks. It doesn't invade. You choose how to respond. That is true freedom. If this video resonated, ask yourself, what pattern keeps repeating in your life? What truth have you been avoiding? Comment below. I read every message. And if this helped you understand yourself, more deeply. Like the video, share it with someone who needs it, and subscribe for more psychology-based transformation content. Your next level of awareness begins here. Are you ready? Because from here on, the journey becomes internal. Up to now, we've explored how trauma fragments the psyche, how autonomous complexes form, how identity fuses with pan and true. Healing requires confrontation, recovery, and symbolic integration. But now comes the most difficult question of all: what happens after you become aware? Because awareness changes everything. Once you see your patterns, you can't unsee them. Once you recognize your complexes, they stop hiding. Once you realize your pain has been shaping your choices, your relationships, and your sense of self, you reach a crossroads. You can either retreat back into unconsciousness, or you can walk forward into responsibility. And this is where most people stop. Not because healing is impossible, but because healing demands courage. The moment you realize you are not your trauma, there is a silent moment in every healing journey. It doesn't arrive with fireworks. It doesn't announce itself loudly. It comes quietly. It's the moment you realize, I am experiencing this pain, but I am not this pain. That single distinction is revolutionary. It creates distance between awareness and suffering. And that distance is freedom. Before this moment, trauma feels like identity. After this moment, trauma becomes experience. And there is an immeasurable difference between the two. When pain is identity, it controls you. When pain is experience, you can observe it. And observation weakens its grip. Jung believed that consciousness itself is healing, not positive thinking, not suppression, not pretending. Consciousness. Because whatever enters awareness begins to transform. Why healing feels so uncomfortable? Many people expect healing to feel peaceful, gentle, relieving, but real healing often feels destabilizing, confusing, exhausting. Because when you confront trauma, your nervous system doesn't immediately relax. It wakes up. Old emotions surface. Forgotten memories emerge. The body releases stored tension. This is why people say, I feel worse before I feel better. That's not failure. That's integration. You are finally allowing what was frozen to move again. You are giving the unconscious permission to speak. And when it speaks, it does not whisper. It floods. Jung warned that when unconscious material rises, it can feel overwhelming. That's why he emphasized patience, grounding, and symbolic understanding. Without meaning, pain feels endless. With meaning, pain becomes bearable. The shadow, where trauma hides a crucial part of this process, involves what Jung called the shadow. The shadow is not evil. It is everything you learn to hide. Your anger, your grief, your needs, your vulnerability, your suppressed desires. Trauma pushes enormous parts of you into the shadow. And those parts don't disappear. They wait. They influence behavior from behind the scenes. They shape attraction. They affect boundaries. They sabotage growth. Healing means turning toward the shadow, not to judge it, not to destroy it, but to listen. Your shadow carries messages. It holds unmet needs. It guards lost parts of your soul. And until you face it, it will continue to express itself through symptoms: depression, anxiety, addictions, relationship chaos, self-sabotage. These are not enemies. They are signals. They are communications from buried parts of you asking to be acknowledged. Why you keep repeating the same story? Have you ever noticed how life seems to give you the same lesson again and again? Different people, different circumstances, same emotional outcome. That is not coincidence. That is the unconscious seeking resolution. Jung believed repetition compulsion exists because the psyche wants healing. But without awareness, it can only recreate. It brings you familiar pain, hoping this time something will change. But change only happens through consciousness. So the pattern repeats and repeats and repeats until you finally say, "Why does this keep happening?" That question marks the beginning of awakening. It is the moment you stop blaming fate and start listening to your inner world. Trauma and the body trauma is not stored only in memory. It lives in the body, in tight shoulders, in shallow breathing, in clenched jaws, in chronic fatigue, in unexplained tension. The psyche and the body are inseparable. Jung understood this intuitively. When emotional energy cannot be expressed psychologically, it manifests physically. This is why healing is not purely mental. It requires embodiment, movement, breath, rest, expression. You don't just think your way out of trauma, you feel your way through it. Your body must learn that the danger has passed, that it no longer needs to remain in survival mode. This takes time, gentleness, consistency. The transformation of suffering. There comes a stage where something remarkable begins to happen. You start noticing subtle changes. you respond differently to triggers. You pause before reacting. You feel emotions without being consumed by them. You recognize patterns while they are happening. This is not accidental. It is integration in motion. Your nervous system is recalibrating. Your psyche is reorganizing. Your identity is expanding. Jung described this as psychic rebirth. You are no longer operating solely from wounded parts. You are developing an observing self, a centered awareness, a deeper presence. You begin making choices instead of reacting automatically. And slowly, very slowly, life feels different, not perfect, but lighter, clearer, more intentional. From surviving to living, most traumatized people live in survival mode. They are always bracing, always anticipating danger, always preparing for loss. Healing transitions you from survival to presence. You stop scanning for threats. You begin inhabiting the moment. You start experiencing joy without guilt, peace without suspicion, connection without fear. This is not naive positivity. It is nervous system safety. It is embodied consciousness. It is the return of your natural state. The new identity eventually. Something profound occurs. Your story changes. You no longer define yourself by what happened to you. You define yourself by how you responded. You become someone who faced darkness, someone who learned resilience, someone who cultivated depth, someone who understands suffering. This is wisdom, not intellectual wisdom, lived wisdom. And it changes how you relate to others. You become more compassionate, more patient, less reactive, more grounded. You stop expecting perfection from yourself and others. You understand complexity. You recognize that everyone is carrying invisible wounds. This is emotional maturity. This is integration. Living after healing. Healing does not mean life becomes easy. It means life becomes honest. You still feel sadness. You still face challenges. You still encounter uncertainty. But now, you meet these experiences as a whole person, not fragmented, not driven by unconscious wounds, but anchored in awareness. You feel emotions without drowning in them. You face difficulties without collapsing. You navigate relationships with clarity. You hold boundaries. You honor your needs. You trust yourself. This is freedom. Not freedom from pain. Freedom from being ruled by it. Final reflection. If you've listened this far, something inside you already knows. Your pain has been trying to teach you. Your patterns have been asking for attention. Your wounds have been waiting for understanding. Healing is not about erasing the past. It is about reclaiming the present. It is about becoming whole. Not despite your scars, because of them. So ask yourself, what part of me is still waiting to be heard? What truth have I been avoiding? What part of my story needs integration? Your answers live inside you. They always have. Studio final closing. You are not broken. You are unfinished. And healing is how you complete yourself. If this video resonated, leave a comment and share what touched you most. Like the video. Share it with someone who needs it. And subscribe for deeper psychology and transformation content. Your journey inward is just beginning, and it might be the most important journey you ever take.